Okay, so in this lesson, we're gonna walk through the interface, the dashboard, kind of show you the different kind of campaigns. Really more so to say, here's what to focus on, here's not what to worry about too much. There's really only two campaign types that I really want you guys to focus on. They're gonna get you probably 98% of the results that you're gonna get, even if you're advanced, right? If you're a beginner to intermediate, 100% of what you're gonna do is really two things: in-stream discovery. And so we're gonna get into those on the setup. But for now, I know you might have questions. So I think it's important that I kind of walk through this and kind of speak to different pieces of it to give you a better understanding, at least from my perspective, how to think about it, what it may mean. When you get into building campaigns, I just want you to feel more used to being in the interface, if you will. Because I think that's where a lot of people get hung up sometimes, is they don't do enough of going through the interface and getting a feel and a vibe for what's in there. And I think me giving it to you from my perspective could probably really help you with that, instead of you trying to go and figure out all these little pieces. So that's what I'm gonna do real quick. This will be a quick lesson, but mainly just to kind of cover that as a primer before we really start building campaigns. So basically I'm in the ad account. A lot of times I usually start at the campaign tab over here. But as you can see, we don't have any in this account, and we're going to build them. First thing you can do, you can either click this new campaign here, or you can click this plus button here. Both of them will take you to the same destination. It really doesn't matter which one you want to select. I'm probably just used to clicking the plus button, because typically when I have an account with campaigns in it already, you're no longer going to see this new campaign. So I just would rather you get in the habit of using the plus button, because that's what's going to happen after you build your first campaign. You're not going to see that anymore. So we click plus, we're going to say new campaign, okay? And then you're going to see kind of all of these different boxes, and we kind of touched on this briefly before, but there's really two primary boxes up here that I want you to focus on, which is sales and leads. And then when we do our discovery ads, we're gonna go through creating a campaign without a goals guidance. So first I'm gonna walk through sales or leads, and basically these are the same in terms of the campaigns and all of the different little things that we're gonna touch on. It's just you're setting what we call the subtype of, basically tell the algorithm, I want you to focus on getting me sales, or I want you to focus on getting me leads. But once either one of these you select is gonna take you down the same path. So I'm gonna click on sales, and now what you're gonna see is it's gonna ask you to select a campaign type, and we're focused purely on video. We're not worried about the rest of these. Literally all I want you to worry about right now is video. And then it's gonna say drive conversion. So what this campaign is for the smart bidding strategy that we talked about, whereas either get me, maximize conversions, get me as many conversions for my budget as possible, or if we say target CPA, where we can say, hey, Google Ads algorithm, I want this action for this cost, and then it'll try to do that for you. So, but these are, between sales and leads, these are gonna be the paths that are gonna take you down the path of setting up these smart bidding. TrueView for Action is the actual name of them. These are the types of ad you want to really be focused on when you're running in-stream. So then we will click continue. And now when we get into this, again, we're not building the campaign right now. So I'm just going to kind of go through and kind of explain, kind of each one of these pieces so that you have a good understanding. And then once you know that, we'll come back and we'll build the campaign. So don't worry about if I don't select something or not right now. It's really just to familiarize you with the flow and the process and the dashboard. But as you can see up top, the type, the goal, the subtype, it's kind of already laid out for you. Technically, if you click this little plus, it'll take you back out to the beginning, right? So that you can switch that if you wanted to. But I'm gonna click continue back because I wanna go back down where we were. So then you're gonna have your campaign name, which is, we'll talk about that in our media planning. You're gonna usually have that ready already. Your bid strategy, right? So with the drive conversion strategy that I talked about, anytime you want to hover over these little question marks, this is where you can get a lot more information about these things in case they don't completely connect for you. I understand sometimes maybe how I explain something, you might need a different explanation, but Google is going to have a lot of these little, question mark things that you can hover over a particular thing, and it'll tell you more. And sometimes even it'll provide you a learn more, which is basically going to link you out to a documentation article that kind of explains this in further and greater detail. But basically, because of the campaign type, because of the campaign subtype that we have chosen, you're going to have either maximize conversion or target CPA as your bid strategies, right? So I talked about that. Maximize conversions, get me as many conversions as possible for my budget. Target CPA, if I were to select that, is basically going to say, how much do you want to pay for this particular action that we're going to be focused on? And then you would enter that number here. But usually when I'm just starting out, I don't like to start with target CPA. I like to start with maximize conversions, mainly because we don't really have any data on a fresh account to even know what the system can possibly do for you. So I'm more inclined to focus on maximize conversions so that you look at your success metrics and you allow the system to get as many of those as possible to kind of match up what the system is able to do versus where you want to be. The closer you are to where you want to be is when you're probably going to be able to start leveraging the target CPA type of a strategy, because now you know the algorithm is more likely to create the outcome that you want. The further you are away from that, the harder it might be, and that might mean you got to do some warming up on the account. And all of that means is just you might have to run a few ads before the system can really kind of figure out what's really going on. So a lot of times out of the gate, you don't want to constrain it at first, especially because it don't even know anything yet. You're trying to make it do something and they don't even know what that thing is yet. But once you start getting some data, the system will start understanding, okay, I understand what these guys want. And then you'll have a probably better idea of, it'll have a better idea of being able to do what it is that you want. So you have your budgets, that's pretty straightforward. You have your starting end dates, that's pretty straightforward. Sometimes you can build campaigns to fire off at a future date, or if you wanted to, as soon as your ads go live, you'd use the day that you set it up. Sometimes it might make sense to say, you know what, I want this ad to run 2 days out. You can set that date, or I want this ad to run on, Mother's Day or Black Friday or what have you. We call these flight dates in the media buying world. That's basically how you do that right here. Then when we get to the networks tab, more than likely for the most part, most of what you're going to be worried about is where it says YouTube videos. Even when we do our discovery ads, we're going to focus on that particular network. Obviously, you can do YouTube search results. When you're doing discovery, you're not going to have that as an option when you're doing in-stream ads. Right now with video partners, technically, me personally, we never run that. We always, 100% of the time, we uncheck that box. I'm not going to get into why it's just like they don't convert, basically. Really most of the decisions we make is because typically it makes us less money. But so we just always 100% leave that off. Locations, that should be pretty straightforward. Languages, obviously if you are advertising in different languages, you want to look at that. Typically we know we're doing English. Usually we're not all languages, we're usually English. If you're doing other languages, then you can take that into consideration. Because in essence, what this saying right here is, we're going to show ads to people based on the setting that they have in their YouTube account, right? Because we're showing ads to people when they're on YouTube. When people create their account, they can select their own language settings. So now you can advertise to people based on that. And so if their primary language is Spanish, for example, you can show ads to people who have designated that in their ad account. But again, that's kind of depending on where you're at in the world type of thing. That should be pretty straightforward and make sense to you. The other thing here is you have these inventory types. Now, typically I kind of like to go for expanded. Some people might disagree. Some brands, I understand why they may not want their ads showing against certain types of content. But, for me, like, I think if you can target the right person, it really doesn't matter, if there's profanity or what have you. But, if that's a concern of yours, then don't use expanded. But for all intents and purposes, when I go through this process, that's what the one that I'm going to select. And then on these labels, it's called excluded types and labels. Usually we uncheck that box. We check both of these embedded videos, live stream. I just think based on our experience, if someone is in a live stream environment, trying to get them out of that into an ad is kind of, I think, counterintuitive because usually live streaming is an event-based thing. So I think you're asking people a lot when they kind of in this mode of knowing, this thing is going to be over right now. Like I'm watching the Super Bowl right now. You know what I mean? The ads come on, you got them. But if they're in the thick of whatever live stream they're in and it might be really exciting or what have you, they're not going to skip. They're not going to click your ad. They'll be like, oh, I'll come back to that. And they're not going to come back to that. So we usually uncheck those. Embedded videos is very similar to the display thing up top here that I unchecked because it's like videos embedded on other people's websites just not have been proven to be very effective for us. So these are typically the primary two boxes that we're checking here. Then you have some called site link extensions where you have to actually create these. I would recommend you don't worry about these right now. That's more of an intermediate to advanced strategy that, when you get your ads up and running and doing well, these are like little things that you can do to incrementally improve. But, if you're not spending 5, 10, 20 grand a month on the low end, like you're not even going to worry about that, to be honest. So I wouldn't be too caught up in site link extensions right now. Additional settings. You're going to be able to have all of these different little settings here. Usually, the way we create our conversion actions, because of the way we set them up, we usually don't have to really change this. Although you can you can choose a specific conversion action here if you wanted to do that. Let's say, for example, if you're running bottom of funnel and you don't want the thing to optimize for a page view or a lead, you only wanted to optimize for one particular thing, then this is where you can set that and say, I only want the system to focus on this particular action, right? So there are reasons when you want to do that. Then we have our devices. Most of the time, 100% of the time, actually right now, we're not running ads on TV screens. I think that there's a way to leverage that, but 99.99% of what we do, I feel like you need a different creative type. So if you just focus on in-stream and discovery, that's going to get you everything you need. I think TV screens, if you're really advanced, you're spending multiple six figures a month, TV screens is probably something you want to take a stab at because it could be another area that you can tap into, but most people are not going to be worried about that. Now, another thing about devices, I don't recommend if you're a beginner to isolate by device, but if you are more intermediate, you can actually build a campaign out based on one device. You can duplicate that campaign so that you control how the algorithm serves your ad and try to get you the action you want at a device level is how we normally would do that. But again, that's probably more intermediate. But usually, like just starting out, you're not going to really mess with this. But just in case, I think some of you may be in a different place, so I wanted to point that out. Frequency caps, that's usually like a frequency capping is more of like a middle bottom of funnel where you want to be careful how many times people are seeing your ad. So you can cap how many impressions that they get, or you can cap how frequently they get that ad. For example, an impression may be, if someone skips your ad, that's still an impression. If someone actually doesn't skip your ad and they watch it long enough, they count as a view. So if you want to be controlling how many times that happens, that's really what frequency capping is designed to do. Usually at top of funnel, we're not doing any frequency capping. We really only kind of doing that as a remarketing play. The other thing is ad schedule. Now this is a tricky one. I think if you really know the times of day, or for example, if you primarily talk to people during a certain time of day, or your sales are all coming at a certain time of day, you want to worry about ad scheduling. Initially, if you're just collecting data, you kind of just want to leave it open. But it's one of those things, it kind of really depends on your business. So I would say if you don't know what you're supposed to do, you probably would just don't do anything, is what I would recommend. Now, we get down here to ad group section, and this is probably a little bit more into campaign building that we're gonna get into, and we'll talk about a lot of that. But there's a couple different types where we have standard and responsive. Mainly, we're gonna focus on standard. Responsive is a new type of format. I would say maybe a year or two ago that they kind of start doing that. We haven't seen a lot of success with them, so I'm not gonna recommend them at this time. But if some point in the future they actually start performing better, which is what Google is telling us, then I'll come back and we'll do an update and I'll share that information with you guys. But you really just want to focus on standard. Then you get down here into your demographics, audiences, targeting, and all of that kind of stuff, which is mainly what we're going to cover when we get into our campaign setup. So that's pretty much those things. This is where you create your ad. We're about to show you guys how to do that as well. So that's pretty much it on those things. The only thing I would do is back up real quick and switch to when we do a video discovery setup, just to kind of show you, it might be a couple little things different here. We go create campaign, whatever goes, guidance. We click video, and then what's gonna happen is gonna ask you all of these subtypes, and really it's just like create custom video campaigns. So I'm gonna click on that. And I wanna make sure that there aren't, because really your bid strategy when you do this is only two types, right? So we were just working on like the drive conversions, and now with a video discovery, you're gonna either have max CPV or target CPM, and that's really gonna all you're gonna be able to have. A lot of this other stuff is pretty much the same. Like we talked about networks, locations, languages. I think it's pretty much all the same. I just wanted to triple check real quick on those. So that's pretty much the things that I wanted to cover. And then now we're gonna end up moving into campaign setup. So what I recommend you do from now as an action item is you can actually go and kind of walk through here, click around, familiarize yourself so that when you get into the campaign setup, you're familiar with what we're doing. You'll understand now when you look at that this template here under campaigns, you're gonna see why these things are in this template. So when you're planning, you don't gotta go jump into an account every time and go figure out all of these things again. It's already here in the template. It makes it easier, simpler, quicker to plan. And then when you go build, you already know what you're building from your plan, and it really just streamlines the process. So you're not wasting a bunch of time jumping around and this, that, and the other. So that's really what I recommend. I recommend you take advantage of that now. Go familiarize yourself. And then in the next lesson, we're going to get into setting up campaigns.